It's day 2 of testimony in the Sean Diddy Combs trial, and the prosecution's star witness, his ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura, taking the stand.
Is she ready?
Very ready and confident.
Today, for the first time in 6 years, Cassie coming face to face with Diddy, telling the jury in graphic detail about what they say is the darker side of the rap mogul over the span of their 10-year relationship.
She did say these freak-offs lasted between 1 and 4 days, and it would take her an equal amount of time to get her body recovered, to rehydrate, to rest.
She was emotional. She broke down into tears at one point when she talked about participating in those freak-offs.
Cassie told the jury that the freak-offs made her feel disgusting and humiliated and worthless.
4 years. The world saw them as the power couple of hip-hop. She was the rising star. He was the mogul who controlled her career. But behind closed doors, it was a nightmare. Today, under oath, Cassie revealed details. She described a decade of abuse, manipulation, and a twisted secret lifestyle that Diddy forced her into. From freak-offs to physical violence, this wasn't just a toxic relationship, it was a prison. And for the first time ever, Cassie is naming names, exposing evidence, and making sure the world knows the truth.
When she walked in there, Rachel, she had on a brown dress, form-fitting, visibly pregnant, head held high, and did not make any eye contact with the defendant, with Sean Combs. She said that Sean Combs directed everything from what she had on, to the lighting in the room, to how she was supposed to interact with the person that she was having sex with. And again, just to reiterate what is a freak-off, the freak-off essentially was something that Cassie said she learned about through Sean Combs about a year into their relationship. He described it as voyeurism, wanting to watch her have sex with someone else. And she said that she did it because she was 22, 21, she was young, she didn't know any better, and that she wanted to please Sean Combs.
But the most disturbing part, if what she said today is any indication, Diddy's empire might not survive what's coming next. When Cassie Ventura first signed to Bad Boy Records at 19 years old, she thought she was living the dream. Diddy was music royalty, the men who launched careers. But behind the glamour, a 17-year age gap, an imbalance of power, and a relationship that quickly turned sinister.
In a day of graphic and emotional testimony, the star witness, Cassie Ventura, telling the jury how her relationship with Sean Combs quickly became a blur of jealousy, violence, and degrading, unwanted sex.
Cassie testified that early on, Diddy isolated her from friends, dictated her image, and even controlled her music. She signed a 10-album deal in 2006, but only one ever released. Why? Because Diddy blocked her career whenever she stepped out of line.
Well, she was 19 and a young singer, and Combs signed her to a 10-album deal with Bad Boy Records, so a long-term deal, and she said, Eva, that she only made one album. Otherwise, the freak-offs took up so much of her time that it stifled her music career, but it controlled her financially, she said. So she felt like her livelihood, her career, her life really depended on Sean Combs.
He didn't just control her professionally, he owned her life. She admitted, "I lived in homes he paid for, drove cars he gave me, and even my staff reported back to him. If she disobeyed, punishment was instant. Security would take her phone, laptop, even cash, leaving her completely cut off." And then came the freak-offs, the twisted ritual that defined their relationship. What started as a confusing request soon became a weekly demand, with Cassie too terrified to refuse. But why? Because saying no meant worse consequences. "I didn't know what no could turn into," she told the court, making him angry. That's when the real violence started. Cassie's testimony took a dark, graphic turn when she described the so-called freak-offs, a disturbing practice Diddy allegedly forced her into for over a decade. What started as an experimental request soon became a nightmare she couldn't escape.
And at some point in time, she actually had said that she looked forward to the freak-offs. Why did Cassie express looking forward to these said freak-offs?
When the prosecution asked her, was there ever a time that you enjoyed the freak-offs? This is when Cassie got choked up and she said, "I did, but only because I got to spend one-on-one time with Combs, and I really did love him."
And that is speaking to the psychological abuse, in addition to the physical abuse that she potentially experienced.
Yeah, she's definitely laying out someone who was young, who was influenced by wanting to have this record career. She signed a 10-album deal with Bad Boy Entertainment, led by Sean Combs, and basically describes being enamored by Sean Combs, loving him, not knowing about certain things sexually, and him sort of telling her, teaching her about that. And what you hear is someone that was young and she even said, you know, I was young, I was naive, I didn't know any better. But she's really telling the story of someone who thought she was going to be with someone in this music industry that was going to help her career, that cared about her, but quickly learned after the freak-offs that wasn't the case. And what I thought was also interesting is she said that after that first freak-off, she said she felt dirty. She didn't want to do it. And when she brought up the idea of having a conversation about the freak-offs in an email, which the jurors saw, she said she backpedaled in the email because Combs responded by saying, I know, you don't want to do it. And she said, oh no, well, it's not that. But that was the beginning. That was in 2010, where she brings up in an email that she wanted to have a conversation about this. And in her words, she didn't want to do it, but she felt like she had to do it.
At just 22 years old, Cassie was introduced to these sessions, Diddy's way of bonding. She testified, I was confused, nervous, but I wanted to make him happy. The first one happened at his Los Angeles home with a paid male escort, drugs, and masks to hide their identities. Cassie wore a masquerade mask, Diddy's way of making her feel like it was just a game.
Ventura sobbing on the witness stand as she described marathon drug-fueled sex performances with male prostitutes. I just remember my stomach falling, just the nervousness, she said. I think I was 22 at the time. Ventura was a young singer and model. Combs was pushing 40 and had signed her to a long-term deal with Bad Boy Records. Ventura said Combs proposed this sexual encounter that he called voyeurism, where he would watch her having sex with other men. She took drugs, she said Combs supplied beforehand. I couldn't imagine doing all of that without some sort of buffer or a way not to feel it. Sex with a stranger I didn't want to be having sex with.
It was getting worse and worse.
Soon, she said, these so-called freak-offs happened weekly. Combs demanding them so often it stifled her music career and became her full-time job. They lasted 2, 3, sometimes 4 days.
Staff involvement. Security would fetch supplies, baby oil, Astroglide.
You were also in the courtroom. This testimony, I mean, the details of this testimony, from a legal standpoint, what stood out to you?
So from a legal standpoint, there are a few quotes that I want to look at that I think kind of run the gambit of what we're talking about here. We have Cassie Ventura here, and then some of her quotes saying here, after the freak off, the room was pretty bad off. The candle wax, the all over the place. And then she described it as having a pungent smell. And she brought us into those rooms in a way that made us think no one wants to be in there. The only way you can be in there is to be compelled. And I think that fed into the government's argument of coercion. But we also heard something that I think the defense is going to jump on, where she talked about that she was insanely jealous. And we remember from Tenny Garagos, she said that this case was about love, infidelity, jealousy, and money. And so I think something like this, Sean Combs professing to be a man of many women and Cassie potentially being jealous and maybe starting some of those fights or participating in the fights, that's something the defense is going to jump on. And then, of course, this, saying that she's super young and naive, people pleaser, getting her personality. I think her testimony really drove home the idea that this was a horrible interaction, that it was a toxic relationship, as Aaron is quoting the defense. But also, I think there's something that both sides will be able to use from her testimony, that she was trafficked, as the government is arguing, but also that this could just be a domestic violence case where the defense might be able to argue not these crimes, other crimes he's guilty of, maybe not guilty of trafficking and racketeering.
Cassie admitted she hated every second but feared saying no.
Pretty quickly over time, I knew it wasn't something I wanted to be doing, especially how frequently. She claimed she felt pressured to participate. I didn't feel like I had much of a choice, and if she refused, she said Combs would be violent with me. Her voice softer when she described things too graphic for broadcast. She recalled encounters at nearly every one of Combs's homes and at hotels across the country and overseas.
In 2018, Cassie finally ran. During a freak-off at the Century City Intercontinental, she bolted for the elevator, only for Diddy to grab her by the neck and throw her down. Hotel footage captured the attack, which she played in court.
Taking jurors to a moment they've already seen video of, what happened in the Los Angeles hotel in March of 2016. The jury had already seen the video, but they saw it again with Cassie narrating it, saying, "That's me," pointing to herself on video. and telling the jury this was the first and only time, she tried to escape a freak-off before Sean Combs declared it over. She said she got hit by Combs, she had a black eye, and she wanted to leave, but when she tried to, as the jury saw in video, he dragged her back.
Ventura telling the jury he would bash my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me in the head when I was down.
2 witnesses were called today, including a former security officer at the hotel, where Diddy is seen on video attacking Ventura brutally. You remember that video back in 2016. The prosecutors played the video. The witness testified that Diddy tried to pay him off with a giant wad of cash. The day's second witness was a male escort. This is where it really got very juicy, who says that he was paid by Diddy numerous times to have sex with Cassie while Diddy sat there in the corner, masturbating and watched.
Will repeat that she said on the stand. At one point, she said that a male escort had urinated in her mouth and she actually choked on it. And it was at that point, someone in the courtroom actually had to walk out of the door there while, Diddy sat at the defense table listening on here. But as she was describing these events where she said that, there were multiple male escorts that were happening at one time, these freak-offs would happen for 2, 3, the longest 4 days at a time. And control is the word we need to talk about. That is what prosecutors really laid out. And you heard Cassie describe how every action during these freak-offs, which were between her and male escorts, not necessarily between her and her boyfriend, Sean Diddy Combs, he sat off to the side really directing things according to her and mapping along with what he wanted to see. But he was in control, she said, of exactly how they did everything, from the platform shoes that she needed to wear, the clothes that she needed to wear occasionally, masks, wigs, whether or not the male escort could ejaculate, where he could ejaculate. Everything she said was controlled by him. Mind you, Brian, his children, 6 children, are in the courtroom at this point listening to all of this. And the jury was picked knowing that they needed a certain level of comfort to hear these types of descriptions. It was very emotional and really tough to hear, Brian.
The courtroom fell silent as Cassie described the physical abuse. Incidents so brutal, even the jury gasped. This wasn't just control anymore. This was torture.
The prosecutor asked, how frequently was Sean physical with you during your relationship? Ventura responded, too frequently.
I think what made Cassie emotional is having to describe the details of the freak-off and why she did it. When she talked about wanting to do it to please Sean Combs, that's when she broke down. Up until that point, she had just been answering the questions. She's a little soft-spoken at times, but that's when she got emotional. When she had to answer the question about if she enjoyed it, that's when she broke down, because she said, I enjoyed being with Sean Combs. And she says, I did it because it made him happy.
What did the expressions of the jurors look like?
The jurors are laser focused on what Cassie has to say. And that's to be expected, right? Because she is the person who will likely be on the stand, according to attorneys, for 2, maybe 3 days. She's the one that was in the relationship with Sean Combs for over 10 years. So she's got a lot to say, and she's just getting started.
Just how important is Cassie's testimony to the prosecution?
I think it really connects the dots, Rachel. When you look at that initial indictment and what's being alleged, she really is the person that has probably the most information about this idea that the prosecution says, which is creating a criminal enterprise for Sean Combs' sexual desires. Something else that the jurors saw today that sort of connects it back to this alleged criminal enterprise are 7 photos of people that were very close to Sean Combs, one even his former chief of staff. And these were all people that Cassie Ventura was able to name and explain the functions in terms of what they did: security, driver, chief of staff, someone that handled financials. So it's showing that she knew some of these people, again, because she was with him, around him for so long.
Cassie didn't just testify. She brought proof, documented Diddy's abuse, and today, she handed prosecutors everything.
Many of the sessions photographed and filmed, federal agents seizing phones and computers containing videos from the music mogul's estates. Ventura called them blackmail materials that Combs held over her head.
Hard drives containing video evidence of freak-offs, some recorded without her consent. Financial records showing payments to escorts, photos of injuries, black eyes, bruises, timestamp to match alleged attacks, hotel receipts for rooms where abuse occurred, texts where Diddy allegedly threatens her.
Bernardo, we saw text messages between Cassie and Diddy today. The defense has already said they think the messages show the consensual nature of their relationship. I'm curious, though, what's your reaction to those text messages?
So when Cassie was testifying about the text messages, she also put it into context as to why she sent those text messages, what was going on in her mind, that she wanted to satisfy Sean Combs, that she wanted to be a part of this in the sense of that she was scared that if she didn't participate, what would happen to her. These are also common signs of people that are domestic violence victims, that are sexual victims that you see. We're ultimately going to see later on during the trial an expert come in and testify as to how and why victims like these react the way they do and are capable to send these texts that may look consensual to other people, but when you break it down mentally, you're able to see that this is a victim, a person that is broken, a person that has been tainted, a person that has been brainwashed as a result of the violence and the control that Sean Combs had over her.
What about the witnesses who could sink him?
No, there was a moment early on when Cassie mentioned Dallas Austin, who she called a friend who's a producer. So I don't know if that's someone that we're going to hear from. We know that there were pictures shown to prospective jurors that are well-known celebrities, you know, Kanye West, Kid Cudi, Lauren London. We don't know, though, how they fit yet into why they were even asked, do you know these people? Are you familiar with them?
So the prosecution is questioning Cassie right now, still questioning her.
The defense hasn't even got a chance to, I mean, that might change based on the timing, but, you know, because she's such a key witness, it's likely that she will be on that stand the rest of the day. We learned that Cassie referred to him as Pop Pop, and Sean Combs would refer to her as CC. The prosecution says, what does CC stand for? She said Cassie Combs.
What kind of witness is Cassie coming off as to the jurors?
I think naturally when you look at her visually, people see that she's pregnant and looking like she's due any day now. So they might, you know, have empathy, sympathy for her in that way, but we don't really know. We know that they've been instructed to be fair and impartial. As to what type of witness she's coming off as, she's describing someone that she was, someone she said that was trying to figure out who she was at that time and who she was allowed to be. Now you're looking at somebody that's almost 40 years old, totally different person, but even in describing what was going on at her at that time, taking drugs, trying to please Sean Combs, she's really just sort of laying out the case for her not having a lot of control. So I think that's the takeaway. This is someone who is making it very clear that at that particular time in her life, she says she did not have any control really over what she wore, what she did, who she was having sex with. She's a different person now, but I think when she talks about those details and even reflecting on them for herself, as we saw today.
Emily Johnson actually said that Cassie did choke on the urine of an escort when Diddy forced this escort to allegedly urinate in her mouth. They did say inner circle numerous times, I believe, really trying to amplify the RICO charges. Diddy couldn't have done all of these crimes without his inner circle, right? Without his bodyguard, without his driver, without his assistant. They talked about alleged kidnappings. That one time he kidnapped his assistant to go and try to find Cassie when he thought Cassie was cheating. I mean, it was wild. I feel like I could go on forever, but I won't. At a certain point, wasn't able to perform for Diddy and Cassie. He got erectile dysfunction because of what he saw. He said he saw Diddy at one point after an encounter drag Cassie by the hair from her computer seat all the way back to her bedroom while she was kicking and screaming and crying. And after she apologized and came out, he said that Diddy said, okay, you guys want to continue? And he couldn't perform. And that was it. From there, he could not perform after that. And he saw Diddy use Cassie 2 or 3 more times after that as well. And this is a muscular guy. He was 41 years old, a bit smaller, but again, he seemed incredibly affected by what he saw.
This isn't just a civil case, it's a federal criminal investigation. The moment Cassie Ventura walked into that courtroom, she wasn't just fighting for herself, She was taking on an entire system that protected powerful men like Diddy for decades.
Cassie's relationship with Diddy. Some of those details we've seen in prior lawsuits, but to hear her on the stand actually giving those details, reliving those moments herself. Also, you have to remember, she's very pregnant right now. So I'm gonna be curious to see how long she makes it on the stand, how she's emotionally able to weather all of these questions. And what's going to be interesting to watch is, the defense from the very start in their opening statement said that she chose to be there. So I'm going to be curious to see how she responds to questions about, was this her choice or did she feel like she had to do all of these things?
If or when Diddy loses, the fallout could be historic. More victims may come forward. Prosecutors hinted at multiple witnesses waiting to testify. Bad Boy Records' legacy destroyed, Hollywood's silence broken. Cassie's case could inspire others to expose abuse in entertainment. The freakoffs were consensual role play, ignoring the coercion. The videos are edited, even though metadata proves authenticity.
I think what the defense is going to say is that this wasn't blackmail, this was not coercion, this was consensual. We know that Cassie started out with Sean Combs as an early person with someone who is trying to get her career started, and he was going to help her. That's what the defense is going to say, that she was starting out and wanted someone to support her. They did their first record deal together. That's something I think the defense is going to focus on, and had it not been for Sean Combs, she wouldn't be where she is right now. The prosecution obviously is saying he was in control. It may have started out as a consensual. It may have started out with her being excited about seeing him, but ultimately he took control of that relationship. He took control of her career. This is their key witness, and she's on that stand trying to explain all of the charges that the prosecution wants to hit home with that jury.
But Cassie's response was crushing. You don't role-play terror. You don't consent to being choked unconscious. This trial isn't just about Cassie versus Diddy. It's about power, who gets to abuse it, and who gets to expose it. Silence, how NDAs and payoffs kept victims quiet for years. Justice, whether fame and money can still buy immunity in 2025. One thing is clear, Cassie just changed the game.